You're listening to the Outstanding Life Podcast with your host, Johnny D, the motivational cowboy. As a motivational speaker, Johnny D impacts audiences around the world with his message of living the outstanding life. He's a best-selling author, MC, and two-time Grammy-considered artist. This podcast is a place where Johnny D can introduce you to his outstanding friends and share funny, interesting, and heart-provoking stories. Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up. Here comes your host, Johnny D.
Hey everybody, I'm Johnny D, the motivational cowboy. Welcome to this week's podcast. I am so excited about introducing you to what has become such a good friend. But before I jump into that and introducing you to this week's guest, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for tuning in every single week to this podcast. And I want to remind all of you, there is over 80 some podcasts on the platform. So if you missed a show, I want you to go back and make sure that you check it out, man, because we have a ton of guests and different guests on the show, just like this week. All the way from Florida. He lives in West Palm Beach, but now he is actually in Pennsylvania with his mother. His name is Jeff Neal, and Jeff wrote this book called What a Long Strange It's Been. It's based on a life of an educator, the joys, the struggles, and the heartbreak of navigating years as a dedicated educator. And Jeff, you there?
I'm here, Johnny D.
Dude, I thank you so much for taking time to come on the show today and talk a little bit about your book. But before we get into the book, man, I want to learn a little bit about you, and I want the listeners to learn about you and where you came from, who you are. And I'm just going to start this whole thing off. We're going to be all over the place, I'm sure. But I want to get things kicked off by asking you, what was your upbringing like? Where were you brought up?
Okay. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and most of my years were outside of Pittsburgh. In the early 70s, my family moved from Hampton, which is even closer to Pittsburgh, but it's a little steel town called Butler, but I was sort of out in the country.
The country of Butler, Pennsylvania, huh?
Yes. Yeah. It's in Western PA.
Well, I got to ask you, I mean, you spent over 35 years as an educator. What were you like as a child?
Well, most of my teachers, especially in elementary school, would have thought I would never become an educator. I got in quite a bit of hot water, as they say, when I was a young kid. Johnny, preachers' kids and principals' kids have a tendency to be hellions and get in trouble a little bit. And I was a principal's son, and we've talked about this. I was blessed with this ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and it was hard for me to sit still. So the second grade through fifth grade, I was a student of my dad's, as he was a principal. So I sort of thought I had to act up, but plus I couldn't help myself because I couldn't sit still. So I got in a lot of trouble growing up, and early on I wasn't the greatest student, but playing basketball a little bit, I had to keep my grades up and stay out of trouble a little bit. So
Dad was a principal. What did Mom do?
She was also an educator. I don't even know if they have this so much anymore. We took it out of the middle school I worked in. She was a home economics teacher.
Oh yeah, home ec teacher.
Yeah. And they were both born in 1928. And Dad grew up on a dairy farm in Indiana, Pennsylvania, where Jimmy Stewart, the old iconic actor, was from.
Yeah.
And he was the first one to go to college. He went to the Korean War. He, was a sergeant over there, and when he came back, he went to college on a GI Bill. That's where he met my mom at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, and it took him a while to have me. Maybe God was deciding whether we should bring this guy into the world or not, but it was nine years. So Mom was actually 34 when I was born in 1962, and that was pretty old for back then. Everybody usually had a kid right out of high school. And so my parents were older, so they're, a little old-fashioned, had those old-fashioned values. And, being that I was ADHD, they didn't know what that was back then.
I like to joke around all the time, Jeff. I go, show me a guy that doesn't have, ADHD. Take us to any toy store, farm equipment, new car lot. I mean, show me one guy that doesn't have that, and I'll show you a liar.
Yeah. I think we all have it. I think we all have it to a certain degree. That's a good point. Yeah, for sure.
It. So I have to ask you this, man. Was your dad strict with you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was that old school. I had certain chores I had to do if I was going to go play basketball or, in fact, I was like that Tom Sawyer character. I'd try to get all my friends to come over and help me get stuff done so I could go play with them. I had to, bribe them a little bit, I'll treat you at the Dairy Queen if you help me rake these leaves. And, he was tough and I always knew he cared about me, but he was, that generation, they showed their affection by putting the window down, letting the smoke out in the car.
Yeah. Jeff, you just brought something up that I have to share with you. And the same thing as my dad. My dad was, it was yes, sir, no, thank you. Yes. Yes, please. The manners were, he was a tough guy, never laid a hand on me, but he raised me the right way. One day I asked my dad throughout my whole life always said, I love you, kid. I love you. And later on in life, he would call me every single day, just like he would my mom. It was important to him. I became a motivational speaker, and one day my dad came over, and we were having a Budweiser, and I just looked at my dad, and I said, Dad, I know you love me, but I have to ask you, are you proud of me? And now, Jeff, you'd have to picture my dad, big gray beard, tough-looking, Harley Davidson type looking guy. Right, and I've only seen my dad at this point in my life cry one time, and that was at his mother's funeral, my grandmother's funeral. And my dad started crying, and he says, Johnny, he's like, I am so proud of you. So proud of you, but I don't know how to communicate with you. He goes, you're doing things that I never would have ever even dreamed about doing. And you just go out there and you do it. Right, he goes, I don't know how to communicate with you. And when you said that, that generation's just different. That doesn't mean that they don't love you because they're not talking to you, but sometimes they don't know how to talk to you. Right. And it was important for me to just ask him. But I'll tell you what, ever since that day, he's passed on now, but he always not only called to tell me he loved me, but he also called to tell me he was proud of me. It was just one of those things. So, just kind of neat. We kind of have the same type of, fathers. My dad was skilled tradesman for Ford Motor Company. Jeff, let me ask you this then. What did your father think of you choosing education for your major in college?
Well, that's kind of an interesting tale too, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had, I was going to a community college and getting my associate degree in liberal arts, and I had no idea, what I wanted to major in. People were trying to tell me to go into sales, and I didn't know if I was going to, what could I don't have any expertise. I really liked this philosophy class in college. And I came home one day and I said, Dad, I think I know what I want to major in. And he goes, what? And I said, philosophy. And he says, well, that's great. You can get a white robe and get up in a tree, and people will come to talk to you, and you can tell them what life's about, and they'll pay you. And I said, yeah, maybe you have a point. So shortly thereafter, because I was playing basketball, I said, yeah, maybe I'd like to coach. But it wasn't something like, when I was getting in trouble growing up and just trying to keep my grades up, wasn't something like, oh, I'm going to be in front of a classroom someday. It just was the way that life unfolded for me.
So was he happy when you started college and you were actually taking classes? Did he finally say, holy Toledo, the guy's really doing it. My son's really going to be an educator.
he was concerned because I was choosing, back in the 80s when I was coming out of college, there weren't, in Western Pennsylvania anyway, there weren't a lot of teaching opportunities. Once somebody got in those jobs, they died there. And that was how I ended up, one of the reasons I ended up in Florida, because there was job opportunities.
Well, that brings me to my next question. And what happened in upstate New York to make you want to go to the tropics of Florida?
Yeah, you've been doing your homework. One morning, it was a record-breaking cold day with the wind chill. It was negative 67. This was outside of Buffalo, and the wind's coming out of Lake Erie, out of Canada. And my roommate was like, we don't have to go to class. They're having class, but it's optional. And I was like, you know what? Wouldn't it be something to say we walked in negative 67? So we put on everything they told you. I even put like toilet paper around my face and goggles and hat and gloves and down jacket. And I thought, it's not that far. It's just a half mile. And halfway there, the wind was in my bones, and I literally like yelled. And I couldn't, when I finally got into the room, I couldn't open my hands. They were frozen shut. I had to put them on a heater. And I looked at my roommate and I said, I'm moving somewhere where it's warm and there's a beach. And a couple weeks later, I went to a teacher recruitment day in Palm Beach County, had some recruiters there.
So at this point, you were a senior then in college when
Yes.
this happened?
Yeah.
So tell me about that, about you going to this recruitment. I mean, was that your plan to go to Florida, or did that happen accidentally as well?
No, Florida wasn't, the whole nation was there, Hawaii, California. And I was thinking, okay, we're somewhere warm. And I said, okay, Florida. And, but back then they were really needing math and science. And my worst subject in growing up was math. I was horrible in math. I always excelled in history and English, but math and science, I struggled. But that's what they needed for teachers back then. So the guy told me, sorry, we need math and science, but this is where I believe God comes into working sometimes. We happen to be in a restroom at the same time.
Wait, I'm sorry. I thought you said the restroom.
I did.
Not a restaurant.
No, the restroom.
The restroom. Okay.
Yes. We were, things happen. You have to take care of business. And we were washing our hands together. And I said to him, would you have any opportunities for coaching? And he looked at me and, he's drying off his hands. He said, what would you coach? I said, well, I played a little basketball in high school and college. And he goes, I used to coach basketball. Let me see if we got something for you. So he took me back, and there was one English, which was what my major ended up being in, one English position at a junior high. And that's how I got the interview there.
No kidding. So just real quick. So you get the interview, you obviously graduate, you go home, and what do? Load up your car and you drive all the way to Florida, or did you fly? I mean, just tell us real quick about that story.
Yeah, no, I didn't have a car. Even in college, I was always getting a ride with somebody. So my first car was a green 1977 Mercury Monarch, and packed that in a U-Haul and drove to Lake Worth Beach. It was Lake Worth at the time. It just became Lake Worth Beach because it was the only city on the coast that didn't have beach after it. And so now we're Lake Worth Beach. But that's where I moved in 85 in my green Monarch.
So, hey, listen, in this episode, I want people to get to know you. But before we get into, the book and stuff like that, I just have to ask, how many years were you a teacher? Were you an educator? Because you're retired now, correct?
Correct. Yeah. I did 12 years in the classroom, 10 teaching English, and 2 doing something called dropout prevention. And then I did 12 years as a guidance counselor. And then after that, I moved into administration or as an assistant principal. So I did like 10 years of that. It was all in all, it was 34 years. And I stayed at the same school the whole time.
34 years, same school. Jeff, first of all, just let me say, I mean, you are such a cool guy, but I just want to thank you. Thank you for being a teacher, for taking that chance, because I don't believe that teachers get enough respect. And personally, I just want to say thank you, man. Thank you for doing what you did for so long.
I appreciate that.
Let me ask you this, Jeff, just before we get into the book, what advice could you give somebody listening right now that that may want to go into teaching?
Well, it's a tough road, and especially right now, there's so much going on with the pandemic. But what was really cool about it was, and you and I talked about our belief in God and stuff, and it doesn't matter what anybody does, they can serve God every day. But you have a chance when you walk into a classroom, or you're just on the school campus with kids, to change a kid's life.
Yeah.
One of the things in the book I got into, I had an elementary principal that was the principal after my dad, and he was bribing me with a milkshake to behave, and I started behaving a little bit. There was one, he kind of changed a path I was on, and you have that opportunity. So that's one thing. And everybody says, well, you guys don't make any money, and you're arguably one of the lowest paid college graduates. Social workers might be a little bit below educators, but I always said, okay, I get some time off. Maybe I can travel somewhere in the summer. Usually I had to work doing something, but as long as you realize you're not going to be in a Fortune 500 magazine, and you can pay your bills, and maybe you only have steak once a week instead of 3 times a week. You sort of have to know that going in. But if you can say, like, okay, I'm not going to be wealthy, but at the end of it, you can maybe say, hey, how many kids? I run into a kid at the supermarket that's 47 now. I was like 22 when I was teaching them, and do you remember when they remember something that happened in '85, and you realize it's kind of a sobering thought that you can affect kids' lives. So if somebody wants to teach, have a sense of humor, especially if you're in middle school. And, if you care about helping kids. And another thing, you can help your teachers because, it's like you're in the trenches together. One day you can be like, oh, my God, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to get another job. Oh, my God, you're so good at it. Why would you stop doing it? Yeah, I know. But, geez, I'm so so we would counsel each other. Sometimes that would happen at a happy hour, but,
Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit. But okay. I have to ask, Jeff, why did you write a book? Was it always a goal of yours since you were a young kid to write a book? Or is this something that basically happened accidentally?
Well, one of the people who was a mentor, when I was a young man, he was probably, when I say young, I was probably first, second year teaching. And he was a Vietnam veteran, airborne ranger, but he sort of took me under his wing, and he's like, you're always observing and interviewing people. You should write a book. You ever think about that? And no, not really, but that kind of planted a seed way back when. So I always had that in my mind, but no, I didn't have a burning desire to be Ernest Hemingway or, it wasn't like the pandemic sort of encouraged me to write.
So writing this book, did you journal your whole life and you just went back and you start reading your journal, or was it something you just start remembering things and you start writing them down? Like, what was the process like for you?
Yeah, well, I literally retired when we got quarantined, and
perfect timing.
Yes, yeah, and in a lot of ways, but my plan was my mom's 94 and she's out playing bridge right now. God bless her. And my idea was to spend some time with her and maybe travel a little bit. And I did get to Italy, and I was over there when the pandemic broke out. You know, yours truly goes to Italy and goes to the place where it started.
Right.
And, and I didn't want to come up to see my mom, and everybody was going to work and everything was shut down. So, Tom Long, the fellow that mentioned writing a book, I said, well, I'm going to write a book. And then I had a friend that Mark Montleone, he sent me a post when he heard I was writing a book, and it was something from Ernest Hemingway. It said, advice to novice writers, write about what you know about.
Yep.
And what did I know? I knew Lake Worth Middle School for 34 years. So, and answering your question, no, I didn't journal at all, but I could remember, okay, that was 1985 when I started. Okay, let's go back to the old Lake Worth Junior High. And so I would write, my chapters in the book are kind of small, and that's what a lot of people like about it, like 3 or 4. It's like little short stories the whole way through. And as I remembered, the teaching, the coaching, counseling, administration, different things that happened over the career. And that was how I came up with it. It took me about a year to write to get it done, and then another year to get it, polished up for publication.
And for everybody listening right now, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, the book is very intimidating because it's over 400 pages. When I got the book in the mail, I was like, oh man, I've never read a book this big in my life. But because of the way you wrote the book, Jeff, where every 3 or 4 pages, there's a new chapter, there's a new story, you can literally jump around this whole book and get something out of it every single day. There's a life lesson every single day. And the book, you cannot put the book down. Literally, when I have time to read, I literally will spend 30, 40, 45 minutes, an hour reading this. I can't put it down. And when I have to put it down because I'm busy doing something else, I'm so upset. But the book is amazing, Jeff. I mean that. Another question I have for you, though, is the title, What a Long, Strange It's Been. And that's the name of the book. And I got to know the story. I mean, please tell us. It's such a different title.
And it doesn't make any sense. It almost looks like, why would I pick up that book? The guy can't even put a title together. But that was a gift that was given to me by this kid. And I had him in my dropout prevention years. And he one of the things with educators, you have to create a relationship with a kid, and to do that, you have to, reach him. He was like a throwback. He should have been born in the late 60s. He wore a tie-dye shirt. He wore bell bottoms. He had long hair. He was one of the few white kids in my school. And he also, like that generation, he was, smoking marijuana and doing other things. And the counselor was confronting him, and I was, and this kid had, I don't want to spoil that part of the story, but at the end of the year, because we talked about music, he made me a sign in wood shop with the Grateful Dead, and one of their songs is called Trucking, and the line is, what a long, strange trip it's been. And I don't know if he took too many trips or whatever, but when he wrote on the back, he just put, what a long, strange it's been. And I was looking for a title, and I happened to come upon that piece of the wood, and I said, that's a title. What a long, strange it's been. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people like, what kind of title is that? But yeah, it's that's how the title came about.
So I just want to make sure that I'm clear. So how many years from the time that this young man made this for you as a gift to when you wrote the book, and you still had that piece of wood?
Yeah. God. He was probably there in 97, 98. And
so 20 years had gone by.
Longer than that, because, 2020 was when the pandemic started, right?
Yep.
So if he was, over 20 years.
Yeah. This is just kind of a cool story. So this young man does something that he probably went out of his way to do something different because you meant something to him. What did it mean for you, all of these years of being an educator, to have kids come back to you and say, hey, Mr. Neal, thanks, man. Hey, Mr. Neal, thank you.
Yeah. That's the part that's really, like I said, the sobering thought when you think like, yeah, you touch some lives, you maybe help some kids out. It's one of the that's your bonus when some adult comes up to you and says, I really appreciate when you, and it happens to most teachers, teachers, that's a conversation teachers have. Oh man, I ran into one of my old students. I couldn't believe he remembered, and
it is. And it's cool though, right? When the students come back to let you know part of their success was because of you.
Yeah. One of my elementary teachers lives close by. I was going to play golf the other day. I hadn't seen him I ran into him like 10 years ago, but I knew right where he lived. And his wife told me he had cancer, he was sleeping. So I put, his name was Mr. Bono. So I wrote on the inside of the book cover, I wrote to Mr. Bono, I always think about you when I look at a cumulonimbus cloud, because that's what these are cumulus clouds. and so, and it's true. Every time I looked up in the sky and that's a cumulus cloud up there. Mr. Bono, thank you. So, hopefully he was well enough that he can read the book but there's me going back to a teacher, Yeah.
Yeah. How cool is that? Have you ever, like throughout your teaching, 34 years, did you ever have a teacher come to you and say, Jeff Neal, I would have never expected to see you as a school teacher?
Yeah,
especially with how much trouble you got into when you were a kid.
Yeah, a couple of them said, yeah, education's really going down if you're certified to teach. And because literally, I mean, I just, I can't tell you how many times I got swats from a board back when we had corporal punishment.
You're right, yeah.
I was always, almost instinctively was removing my wallet and, take everything out of your back pockets, and then you have to get your punishment.
Jeff, you kind of brought this up earlier, and you talked about, you have an ADHD. You also talked a little bit about the chapter called The Power of a Milkshake. And I want you to just, if you could, just dive a little bit deeper into that chapter for us, because I thought that it was so awesome that a milkshake turned your attitude around.
Yeah, really.
So tell us the story.
The board that wasn't working with me. I just would get the cracks and go back to misbehaving.
So when you say the board, you mean the SWATs?
The paddle, yeah. And I mean, what happened is Mr. Malloy, he was a principal, and teachers were saying this is what he did this time, and if anybody does buy the book, I won't say what I did, but it was my opus in bad behavior. I did two things which I was very proud of. One of them flooding the bathroom, and
wait, what? You flooded the bathroom, and that's one of the reasons why you got in trouble, correct?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I created a tsunami that day in the hallway.
Were you in middle school then?
No, I was in fifth grade.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, special little fifth grader. And then there was a little sixth grade graduation going on, and I cut the power off on that, and had them in the dark and chaos and screaming, and then I went back to class. So, Mr. Malloy, I was ready to get my SWATs, and he says, "Listen, I know this was you. I know you did it, even though I have no proof. I know it was you." And he goes, "I want you to try to be good for 2 weeks, and I'll take you up to the Dairy Queen, get you a chocolate milkshake, whatever you want." And I was like, "Will you take me out of Mrs. Bikert's class?" And he says, "Yes, I will." So then I had to contain myself for 2 weeks, but I sort of really started to get my act together that's why the chapter is called The Power of a Milkshake.
So basically he bribed you. So
Yes, he did.
it's a life lesson that if you can't teach them something, you can't make them do something, just bribe the kid.
Yes.
You're like,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah, no,
So,
and
was
listen,
it
you'll see, like, especially because there was no corporal punishment. I had to, tell kids that the sheriffs were coming with a lie detector test, which wasn't legal, but they didn't know that. And
you mean when you were teaching?
well, when I was doing discipline,
Yeah.
there was all kinds of stuff, and it was bribing and fraud. There was no sheriffs coming, but they didn't know that.
Right.
You
I have to ask, man, was it a vanilla milkshake or chocolate?
I went with chocolate. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, listen, you talked a little bit about, students and what they meant. In one of the chapters, and you were a young teacher then, you got ill and you were actually in the hospital, and students came to see you. Even one young boy rode his bike 10 miles to come visit you to make sure that you're okay.
Yeah. I had appendicitis, and I guess because I was out, one of the assistant principals at Coach Owen was his name, Dean Owen, that they were deans back then. He told him I was in the hospital, and this little guy rode his bike. And he was, from a real tough family, a little blonde-haired kid with a raspy voice. And, he's like, I hope you come back to school. And I remember, I was a first-year teacher, and that meant a lot, Finding out he rode his bike and hit his bike in the bushes. And
hey, what was your first year like? What was it tough?
Oh, yeah. I mean, back then there was no classroom size. I could have 42 kids in a class.
Were you intimidated?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't show it. I couldn't let them see that I was scared and didn't know, how to control a classroom, and a lot of, tough lessons. And, I don't want to tell all this stuff, but I mean, threw an eraser at a kid's head. I thought that was a good idea and got in trouble for
Wait
that.
a second. Your first year of teaching, you threw an eraser at a child.
I did.
Back in the 80s.
Yeah. And
did it hit him?
Yeah, right. Perfect hit right on the side of the head.
Oh my gosh. Well, again, anybody that is listening to this right now, this book is filled with these kind of stories, and literally they take you on an emotional roller coaster ride every single chapter. And speaking of an emotional roller coaster ride, there are times in life where we have to go and let loose a little bit and get out with our friends. Something that you guys did was called happy hour. And it was a great way for you teachers to get out and communicate with one another, maybe help each other out. How important was that for you to go to other teachers, blow off steam, and maybe even find a mentor or two?
Yeah, well, the gentleman that I mentioned to you that was the Airborne Ranger, we met and became friends at a happy hour. And what it did was, because, and like any profession, nobody really understands what you do unless you're doing it. So you have that bond with people. And teachers, we would call it, like, it wasn't just a happy hour. It was like we were professionally debriefing each other. Like, oh my God, this happened today. And I don't know what I'm going to do with this kid. What are you doing with him? I mean, he won't do anything,
Yeah.
And especially when you're young, I tried to just keep my mouth closed and listen to the older teachers, because they've been doing it for years. And, it really takes you like 3 years before you can manage a classroom. You can't just walk in and have discipline and teach the subject. And, that's the fellow that wrote the introduction in my book. He's a friend of mine. He just retired. He did 50 years in a middle school teaching English.
Wow.
And he put in the introduction that 2 out of every 3 teachers leaves in the first 3 years. And it's true. I remember trying to tell these young kids out of college, like, there's no way I'm going to do this. I go, it'll get better. Just hang in there.
Did you ever feel like you wanted to quit?
No, I didn't. I really enjoyed everybody says, well, how could you stay the same school for 34 years? Didn't you want to change? But because I was a teacher and then I was a counselor and then I was administrator, I sort of did have a change, and so that helped me. But no, I never was at the point where I'm not going to do this because you know what? I mean, I'm not skilled. I need help, putting in a light bulb. And, I wasn't going to go off and start a construction company or something. I was like, okay, this is my lot in life. I'm going to work with these kids. So, and I didn't, I wasn't one of the people that, I hate this. I'm just going to collect my paycheck and retire. I really enjoyed, the time over there.
Jeff, what do you want people to get out of your book? When you sit back and think about what you created, what do you want the listeners that are listening now that are going to buy the book, the people that have already bought the book, the people that are reading your book right now, what do you want them to get out of it?
Well, and, I don't want to do the spoiler in it, but, there was something we'll probably get into later on if we ever have another discussion, but just to see what, I think I gave, I mentioned the fellow that did my introduction. He goes, when I said, what'd you think of it? He goes, you wrote a starkly realistic book about education. That's what we deal with. And so, give just people, I think I'll give you a bird's eye view, what it's like to be a teacher. And, and I wasn't a master teacher. I was effective. I was, my gift was relating to the kids and creating relationships. I was probably a better counselor than I was a teacher, and I was a pretty good basketball coach. But the true teachers, what they do every day, it's amazing. And they're artists. And I think I can give you, a view of what it's like to be an educator. And there's some funny stories. I mean, my God, when you're at a middle school, anything can happen. Those kids are capable of anything.
Well, like in the beginning of the opener, I said it's all about the joys, the struggles, and the heartbreak.
Right.
Of being an educator. The book's been out a little while now. Have you had anybody call you, write you, text you, email you, maybe a testimonial that let you know that this book has affected their life?
Yeah. Let me see here. I got my computer. You give me just.
Oh, you have something that you can read us?
Yeah, I just got an email.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. Thanks.
This girl was a teacher, and she had left and moved to New Hampshire, but somehow she got my book, and she just sent this. Dear Jeff, I just finished reading the e-edition of your book, What a Long Strange It's Been. Your book is powerful and a must-read for educators and staff and people across our country. While reading your book, I laughed loudly. I felt anger and frustration and cried. You do have a talent for descriptive storytelling. I was able to visualize your experiences in the classroom and the basketball court, visiting families, your caring relationships with students and staff, and your roles as a counselor and administrator. Needless to say, I like your style of writing. And then your study with the best practices and recovery from a school shooting and the themes that came out. She
that's pretty cool.
She wrote a, but it was kind of stuff like that.
Does another one come to mind?
Yeah.
And you don't have to read the whole thing. Just give us a couple lines if you want.
Yeah, no, this guy, he was a PE teacher, athletic director, and we went through the traumatic experience in our school. And he says, "Hi, Jeff. Hope all is well with you in retirement. My girls," that's his two daughters, "just bought me your book the other day, and I just finished it. What a whirlwind of emotions. I laughed, I cried. I felt pride to have worked with you and our warrior family." We were the Lake Worth Middle Warriors, so we called ourselves the Warrior Family. And realized how special that place was to me. Thank you for sharing your amazing words of wisdom. Let's get together when I get back to South Florida. And then he put "Go Gators," because, these Florida people, you're either a Seminole or Gator fan down there.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing the couple testimonials. Talk a little bit about the front cover. I mean, because who's the guy on the cover?
That's me.
That's you. So we get to see the back side of you. You're carrying a pair of boots, and you have a soda in your hand, and you have the number 33 on. Talk a little bit about this cover. Where was it taken? Who took it? And why are we seeing the back side of you?
Yeah. A friend of mine took the picture, and I didn't even know that it was being taken. It's at Lake Worth Beach, and I was just walking. Now, the interesting thing is that jersey was an actual jersey from our school, but the basketball team got new jerseys. I had already been out of coaching for quite a while, but the athletic director gave me a jersey, sort of like a retirement present. But and at that time, I was thinking about retiring. At 33 years, I did one more, so I did 34. But I thought that would be once that picture was taken. It's a nice little shot. That's Lake Worth Beach, and then off in the distance, there's a pier. It's Lake Worth Pier, and anybody's ever down there, it's a nice part of the coast of Florida down there.
That is pretty cool.
And I sort of thought it was just kind of, I was walking away from my career, so I thought it was a good picture for the cover.
Let me ask you this: how can people buy the book, man? Where can they go?
They're Dorrance. It's Dorance. That's the publisher. You can get it through their library, Amazon, Barnes and Noble.
And they can just look up the title.
Yeah, What a Long Strange It's Been, and Jeffrey W. Neal, and they can order a book. And I have part of what I sell is going to go to a scholarship fund that's set up in a teacher. I don't want to give the book away, what they all have. Maybe we'll get into that at another time.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so just go online, look up, What a Long Strange It's Been.
Yes.
What a Long Strange It's Been by Dr. Jeffrey W. Neal. And Jeff, before I let you go, we literally have a couple minutes. I want you to, and this has nothing to do with the book, nothing to do with this podcast, except for a great story that somebody wrote in, and they told me to ask you. It says here, ask them about the hot air balloon ride home. Jeff, what the heck? I mean, first of all, I want to know, how old were you? What the heck went on with you hitchhiking on the way home, and you come home in a hot air balloon? I can't even imagine what the story is going to be like.
Okay. Well, I got dropped off somewhere, and I got a miscommunication with my ride, so I had like a 14-mile walk through the country going home, and I saw these guys firing up a hot air balloon. And so I walked over, and they were talking to me, and they were, I don't know if you've ever seen anybody, they laid the balloon down flat, and they're firing, and so they're filling up the balloon, and I said, like, God, I'd love to go up in one of those. And
how old were you?
Well, I like 16.
Okay.
And he says, well, we're supposed to have one more guy. If he doesn't show up, you're welcome to get in with us. Where do you live? And I said, well, and I told him where I lived. And I said, well, we're going to be letting down in a field near there. So I was like, well, that would be cool. And, what was hilarious was my mom and my sister, because I'm sure you talked to my sister about this one, but my mom and my sister are out in the yard, and here comes Jeff in a balloon. And, I yelled down like, hey, what's going on? And my mom's like, oh, my God, how did he get up in this balloon? And,
oh, my God, that is awesome. Listen, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. And I want to make sure that, again, folks, those of you that are listening, please go check out this book. I'm telling you, once you start reading it, you are not going to be able to put this book down. It's called What a Long Strange It's Been. It's by Dr. Jeffrey W. Neal. And Jeff, before I let you go, do you have anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah, you know what? And I'm glad you said that, because, I'm a believer, and I have a couple things I read every day, little devotional stuff. And I was kind of saying a prayer like, hey, let's Johnny and I have a good talk today. And the little thing I read, I think it was an Indian. His name was White Eagle. He was a Christian guy. And I just like to read his little things because they're real short. And I was thinking about you when I read this. So this is for you. This isn't about me or the book, okay?
Thanks.
Men look to you. Do not be beguiled by the attractions of materialism, or by the sorrows and anxieties which your karma brings. Have courage, for so many depend on you, your thoughts, your attitude. Men are looking to you and unconsciously recognize in you a light. They know that you have something which is helpful and good. Keep the light shining in your heart and mind, and remember the great privilege which has been given to you to help lead man onward and upward to the glorious morning star.
That's awesome.
That's it, buddy.
That's it, man.
That's your thought for today.
I love it. I love it. Hey, everybody. And Jeff, if you don't mind, maybe in a couple of weeks, man, would you like to come back on the show and maybe we'll dig deeper into your book and we can talk about some other chapters and stuff like that and kind of take people on, the book is big enough, man. We could do this for a couple months.
Yeah, you know what, John? It would be an honor because every time I talk to you, I always hang up the phone feeling good. So if you're struggling that much to get an interesting guest, I guess I'll try to fill in.
I love it. Well, hey, Mr. Jeff Neal, thank you so much for coming on the Outstanding Life podcast. I'm Johnny D, the motivational cowboy, telling all of you, be safe, have fun, and have yourself an outstanding day. We'll see you next time right here.
Have you ever been to California? Picture this, 6 lanes of traffic on both sides and completely packed. It's ridiculous, crowded all the time. One day in particular, there was a man on his way home from work in an old beat-up pickup truck. While driving, he saw this huge white limousine with a flat tire parked on the side of the road. He started making his way over to the shoulder of the highway. Once he was there, the guy got out of his truck and walked up and knocked on the window. The driver said, "Can I help you?" The guy responded, "Yeah, I see that you have a flat tire. Can I help you out?" Surprised, the driver replied, "Wait a second, you're gonna help me out and change the flat tire with me? I just called roadside assistance and they said it was gonna be 2 hours. Yeah, if you're gonna help me, let's do it." Together, the two men went to the back of the limo, began removing the flat tire, and quickly got the job done. Once they were finished, the driver said, "Hey man, thanks. I wish there was something nice I could do for you." The guy responded, "Hey, just have a great day, sir." He started walking back to his pickup truck, and as he passed the limo's rear window, it began to roll down. The businessman inside said, "Hey, thanks for helping my driver change the flat tire. It looks like we're going to make it to the meeting. Is there something nice I can do for you?" The guy answered, "Just have a great day." The businessman again tried, "No, really, I want to do something nice for you." The guy goes, "Just have a great day." The businessman began to yell, "Sir, I want to do something nice for you." So before returning to his pickup, the guy finally said, "Hey, you want to do something nice for me? Send my wife some flowers." He wrote down his address for the businessman. Weeks went by, and he forgot all about the flat tire, the driver, and the businessman. One evening after work, he pulled up in his driveway, and his wife came running out and jumped on top of him. Confused, he said, "Get off me, get off me." Okay, she said. But as she gave her husband some space, she thanked him again and again. He said, "For what? What did I do for all this?" She said, "Well, for the flowers." The guy admits, "I didn't send you any flowers. They're probably for the newlyweds down the street. They're just delivered to the wrong house, honey." "Did you open the card?" She goes, "Well, no, I assume they're from you, honey." So they opened the card, and this is what the card read. thank you so much for helping my driver fix the flat tire. We made it to the meeting. I got the deal. Your friend, the businessman. P.S. Your mortgage is now paid off. This is Johnny D telling you a simple act of kindness goes a long.
You're listening to the Outstanding Life Podcast with your host, Johnny D, the motivational cowboy. As a motivational speaker, Johnny D impacts audiences around the world with his message of living the outstanding life. He's a best-selling author, MC, and two-time Grammy-considered artist. This podcast is a place where Johnny D can introduce you to his outstanding friends and share funny, interesting, and heart-provoking stories. Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up. Here comes your host, Johnny D.
Hey, everybody, I'm Johnny D, the motivational cowboy. Welcome to this week's podcast. I am so excited about introducing you to what has become such a good friend. But before I jump into that and introducing you to this week's guest, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for tuning in every single week to this podcast. And I want to remind all of you, there is over 80 some podcasts on the platform. So if you missed a show, I want you to go back and make sure that you check it out, man, because we have a ton of guests and different guests on the show, just like this week. All the way from Florida. He lives in West Palm Beach, but now he is actually in Pennsylvania with his mother. His name is Jeff Neal, and Jeff wrote this book called What a Long Strange It's Been. It's based on a life of an educator, the joys, the struggles, and the heartbreak of navigating years as a dedicated educator. And Jeff, you there?
I'm here, Johnny D.
Dude, I thank you so much for taking time to come on the show today and talk a little bit about your book. But before we get into the book, man, I want to learn a little bit about you, and I want the listeners to learn about you and where you came from, who you are. And I'm just going to start this whole thing off. We're going to be all over the place, I'm sure. But I want to get things kicked off by asking you, what was your upbringing like? Where were you brought up?
Okay. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and most of my years were outside of Pittsburgh. In the early 70s, my family moved from Hampton, which is even closer to Pittsburgh, but it's a little